Aztec slavery? Bro, do you know how bad Aztec slavery was? In Roman slavery, they would line...
Look, this is what right-wing people do. They take other civilizations that did slavery too, and they say, see, they did it too, but they were more savage-like, right? They were more brutal. We were more refined when our country, our people did it. This is what they do, man.
Streets with slaves.
Every time. Let's move on to something that looks really disgusting. Okay, the thumbnail, so the title of this video is called It Wasn't That Bad. And the thumbnail seemed to illustrate a glimpse into the chattel slavery system. Basically, what Leaflit was saying with this title plus thumbnail is slavery wasn't that bad. So let's hear
slaves, and I have a whole episode on slaves.
Oh my God.
So like, let's talk about slaves.
Okay,
Like, are slaves immoral?
Well, like, wasn't there cases of slaves that wanted to be slaves?
Yeah, well, actually, this is the case in Jewish tradition. So I had to do an episode where
Well,
I like super dug deep.
Sort of. It's more like there were slaves that didn't realize they were really enslaved. They didn't understand what it was, not because they're stupid, right? Like I said, people be around the same intelligence generally, okay? It's not that. It's that because they were imprisoned, they were in chains, and they had always been, since birth, they did not understand what it meant to be free. They had no concept of it. It's kind of like, imagine you could do anything. You could manipulate time and space and matter, right? You can maybe imagine it, but you wouldn't have unless someone told you to, because you can't do it, right? Unless somebody else puts the idea in your head, right? Somebody that like has a more creative side, right? And they like come up with stories. You would never be able to imagine yourself doing something like traveling through events in causality. You know, because you are stuck in the confines of space-time, right? You see time linearly, you see space as concrete. In reality, these things are manipulatable.
Into slavery as approved by
But
God,
anyway.
and was it actually more moral than other slavery of the period?
Maybe that wasn't a good
because I was like,
analogy.
is it, like, what was it actually? And one of the interesting things is, in Jewish tradition, I can't remember exactly, but like there was a period where you would otherwise give up your slave because like their contract had ended, but if they branded themselves because they liked being your slave so much, they could stay your slave forever.
Well, so you only had time, there was a time limit to it, basically.
Yeah, and so he said God warned slave owners to treat their slaves well, or they would
I'm
suffer.
sure that
Something
was
you
not a
destroyed, by the way,
coercive system at all.
That's where that addition comes in, where it's like treat your slaves like you treat your wife. I think is something like that, right? Like it's like a, you know. But anyway, yeah, slavery was different back then. Romans treated their slaves better than Southerners treated black slaves. Fucking untrue in the extreme. This is a modern lie that leftists need you to believe so that you think that chattel slavery was fundamentally unique and bad compared to other forms of historic slavery. It is untrue in the extreme.
Well, no. You're right that leftists don't say this. Okay, they just don't. Chattel slavery was unique, okay, for multiple reasons. But it wasn't like more evil, I guess, than other than other slavery systems. Okay, let's break it down. Okay, the chattel slavery system is all about property rights. Okay, slaves are property. Humans own property. Slaves are not human. Okay, they're cattle. Okay, they're chattel. That is that system. Okay, the Roman system was a lot different. Okay, because they didn't have the same free market ideas that we do, and that the classical liberals, the founders of this country, had. Okay, they had a different set of ideals. And what came along with that was a different set of ethics. But, similarly, the Romans justified slavery just like our ancestors did in America. Okay, so that's where they're similar, right? Both of the systems are evil, and they were both justified through uh, mental gymnastics, but that they were different though, but they were different. Okay, chattel slavery is very unique, and I'd like to talk about why. Okay, but let's hear what he has to say.
If you want to talk about the most brutal forms of slavery that I'm aware of in history, probably the most brutal was Greek slavery. Greek slavery was more brutal than Roman slavery. So in Athenian silver mine slavery, the average lifespan was 8 years. They had to so frequently import new slaves because slaves just died like that, right? Like in Roman slavery tradition, the American slavery was actually, in the grand panoply of historic slavery, one of the more moral systems because they economically...
That's insane. That's insane, man. Also, it depends on the plantation you were on. Were some plantations nicer to their slaves, the people that they immorally and evilly imprisoned and forced to toil away? Is that, like, technically true? Actually, not really technically true, but I guess sort of, you know, because you could look at it like, did enslaved people in the mines die faster in America? Yes. Okay. But by the way, what he's talking about, it's true. Okay, kinda. It's just that people, when they are enslaved and they are forced to work in mines, yeah, they die pretty fast. Okay, it's deadly. It's dangerous. In the chattel slavery times, in the Greek slavery times, okay, it was deadly. Okay. However, that's just across the board, okay? And there was plenty of that kind of work going on in the chattel slavery system, and they didn't live that long. But you know, one way of looking at it is like, okay, well, if you live on like a nice little plantation, right, and you're enslaved and you're forced to pick cotton or you're killed. Well, I guess that is nicer because you don't die, right? But then you also have to live longer and suffer being enslaved by fucking stupid-ass white people in the antebellum South.
Died, which was not true. Yeah, Aztec slavery? Bro, you know how bad Aztec slavery was? In Roman slavery, they would line...
Look, this is what right-wing people do. They take other civilizations that did slavery too, and they say, see, they did it too, but they were more savage-like, right? They were more brutal. We were more refined when our country, our people did it. This is what they do, man.
Streets with slaves
every time
being crucified. This was a normal thing they did for acting up, okay? Do you know how horrible a crucifixion death is? Like, I'm assuming because a lot of you are Christians, you probably had that beat into you as a kid. This was the regular punishment for slaves in ancient Rome. And you're like, they didn't do that in the South. They did stupid little, like, neck things, like, don't run away or we'll put a bell on you and we'll whip you. Come on!
I mean, history was brutal, man. Like, I guess you have to compare it to ancient times. To compare anything to ancient times is actually nutty.
No.
That is really disgusting. I believe he is drunk in this clip because I saw the last video that like, this is so embarrassing, dude. Imagine getting drunk and saying this on the internet for all to see forever. It's disgusting, man. Sober up.
It gets worse. They're like,
this
did you
ain't
know
right.
that in the South, they raped their slaves sometimes? I'm like, who didn't rape their slaves historically? In the South, you at least weren't supposed to, which is pretty unique in human history. It's still brutal, but like, we should be honest about it. I do not like this, oh, it was a uniquely bad form of slavery, different from all other slavery in human history. It may have been different from native forms of slavery. Some forms of slavery that took place in Africa and some forms of slavery that took place among Native Americans. It was genuinely worse than those. It was not worse than Roman slavery, and it was certainly not worse than ancient Greek slavery.
This is what I love about these conversations. I learn new things all the time because I'm not an expert on slavery. All I know is that the idea that the idea that the slaves just came out of that it was people in the West that were like sourcing slaves. It's bullshit.
Yeah, so the worst of chattel slavery is the trip from Africa. That and the plantations that were meant to break them in the islands, like in Jamaica and stuff like that. Those are really horrible places.
The white Europeans that were demanding more bodies definitely weren't the reason that black people were black-bagged and enslaved in Africa.
Not even close
For
to.
sure,
Okay,
man.
let me put it this way. The difference between me today and saying, Malcolm, if you could live your day as a human today in the life that you live, or live as a southern chattel slave, right? The difference in quality of life between those things is dramatically closer than the difference between a chattel slave and an Athenian silver mine slave. in terms of like how bad the quality of life was. So they said, what about the Spartan slaves? The Spartan slaves had one of the uniquely good lives.
Really? Why was that?
They basically just got to live their own lives so long as they paid really heavy taxes. And I mean, if Kritea was a thing, they occasionally were subject to random Spartan youths who could kill them at any time. But outside of that, they basically just lived their own lives and had to pay heavy taxes to Sparta. It wasn't that bad, the Helots. I mean, they lived as second-class citizens, but they were the majority to the extent that like living as second-class citizens doesn't matter when you're 80% of the population.
Yeah.
So being a Helot was kind of like being a normal middle-class American. A billionaire can kill you whenever they want, and they don't face legal repercussions. And they have power over your life, and you don't really have a lot of impact on politics. But you know what? You still get to kind of live your life the way you want to.
That's kind of true. That sounds like the Starship Troopers things. That's
really, yeah, the billionaires just come up and shoot you, and they don't even know nothing's gonna happen.
well, they do it.
Interesting. You want to know what Harriet Tubman said? The biggest hurdle? Dude, what he just said made me think of this. Okay, Harriet Tubman said that the biggest hurdle against freeing the slaves. Alright. This is what she said in her time. I believe, okay? And I'm paraphrasing. Okay. But I believe she said something like, the hardest part is convincing enslaved people that they are enslaved. That's it. If you try to tell a person who is enslaved that they are enslaved, they're gonna be like, what the fuck are you talking about? The hell are you talking about,
like, you know, like they probably even do it themselves, hire someone to do it.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're with your Caitlyn Jenner, you can run over an old person. Nobody cares.
So we are living in a slave state.
Okay, so slavery.
Yeah.
The question is slavery, like, does it have positive effects on a society? And the answer is it doesn't. It actually is, like, economically terrible for society. If anything, if you do sort of the calculations, the descendants of slaves should be paying the South's reparations. They did so much economic harm to the South.
No, they didn't. The South did economic harm to the South. Imagine saying that the people who were forcefully enslaved it's their fault when they had zero choice in the matter. That's insane, man. No, I'm not even gonna...
You don't build the technology. This is largely why Rome likely never industrialized, because they had so many slaves, right? Like, they had all of the knowledge they needed to for like basic steam power, basic hydraulic power, but they didn't build it because they had those freaking slaves, and they only had those slaves because their neighbors were so easy to conquer. If my ancestors in Britain were such witless fucks, we wouldn't have had our people fuel the Roman Empire slave trade and allow them to never to develop industrialization.
Yeah, well, it's like you can increase output by just stealing more slaves, right? Whereas like in a society where you can't do that, you're forced to innovate in order to achieve scale. Yeah, it makes sense.
So it's funny that the Brazilian slavery in Brazil was much worse than the United States, which it was to my understanding. Oh, and then we also talked about like sex slavery. Like, are sex slaves good? Oh, I'm on Twitch. I don't even think I need to say anything. Can you have like sex slaves? Like, when are sex slaves good? When are sex slaves bad? And the answer is like sex slaves are generally pretty bad because you end up breeding with like weaker populations that you conquered. This was the episode where we go into the difference between.
Okay, but what if you now have contraceptive technology?
Yeah, I mean, they might be useful for that, but I just think it's too risky. Somebody might end up forming an emotional attachment to one. It's much better just to like handle the population. I mean, that's how Muhammad died, right?
I have no clue.
Jewish sex slave. Yeah, he killed her family and her husband and her kids, and he was like, "Why did you poison me?" It's like, well, you killed my kids and my husband and made me a sex slave, so.
So she just played like a long con, basically?
Yeah.
Damn.
Poisoned and died horribly.
Yeah, I didn't know about that. That's crazy.
That was gross.